totality. Oh my goodness, this is an exciting day, is it not, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? You don't get to do this for like another 4 decades, you know, glasses and all. I have mine. I thought that maybe I'd even be able to see through to you guys wearing these because, you know, I have like all these bright lights in the studio, but it didn't work. It did work. It did work for the eclipse though. Hey, Drew, if we get those cool pictures of the eclipse, we should show everybody because right outside my house, there's like a lone tree. And then you look up and you see the sun with your glasses, of course, ladies and gentlemen. You see the sun and you see, well, you see the moon behind it there. I mean, this is kind of like really cool, really sort of amazing stuff. I mean, look, I'm not like a super nature freak, but I appreciate a moment like this, as we all should. I mean, it's a little hectic. America's kind of been strapped here in waiting for this eclipse. You've got national emergencies being declared, I should say state emergencies, right? All around the country because they're worried about traffic. They're worried about what's going to happen, you know, when this hits. Do we have that great animation? There's this really cool animation, you guys. I want you to see this of basically the whole movement and pattern of how, I mean, it started out in Mexico, in Mazatlan, and then just was moving up and up and up and up and then coming into North America. And this is cool. This is from NASA. And they were showing us the trajectory of this as it came into the U.S. You know, it started out in Texas, and we saw some of the video of people getting really excited in Texas, and then moving up, and then, of course, hitting the Northeast, which is where I am. And it was a big deal up here. I mean, really, really exciting. I have a lot of friends that went to upstate New York. I mean, they booked this stuff like years ago, like 2 years ago, because you can't get any rooms right now. And I'm like, yeah, the only problem with that is you got to get home. Like now, can you imagine the traffic just trying to get home? The Wall Street Journal had a big article on that the other day. Anyway, you know, this whole eclipse thing going on, and it's causing a lot of commotion. There's a story in the Daily Mail about the animals freaking out, the zoo animals freaking out when this happened. And well, it's not just the zoo animals, right? Because over on The View, They're coming up with all kinds of theories about why we have the eclipse, even blaming climate change. Now, full disclosure, yours truly is not a scientist. I know a lot about the economy, but I can't claim any of that knowledge when it comes to science. I mean, you know, we got to go back to high school really to to dig into my scientific knowledge. So I'm not trying to say that I'm an expert in any way, shape, or form, but when Whoopi Goldberg is doubting her colleague on this one, I think it's kind of funny. Somehow now, climate change is responsible for the eclipse. I mean, that's a new one. That's a new one. And I mean, even Whoopi's like, hey, wait a second. Like, we all knew. We all knew the eclipse was coming. And this wasn't anything sort of totally out of the blue. Again, I'm not a scientist, but it's kind of funny to see how this whole thing is freaking out the ladies on The View. We're going to talk some Trump stuff and judge stuff and real news too. But, you know, hey, the eclipse only comes, once every, in this case, you're going to wait another 40 years. Might as well check out this.
Those things together would maybe lead one to believe that, you know, either climate change exists or something is returning.
Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground.
No, it happens.
And
the eclipse, they've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen, and they actually can say when these things are going to happen.
So she's sort of like, you know, Sunny, whose name is, by the way, Sunny. Hey, honey, they happen. They know when they're going to happen. And maybe this isn't all, I mean, I know you want to blame everything on climate change, but, you know, maybe this one you kind of got to give a pass to. Anyway, you know who's also having a little fun with this? None other than our friend Donald Trump sending out, I'll tell you, he's got a great social team. They sent out quite a meme. Take a peek. There it is. The most important moment. The most important moment of the entire year. Actually, no. In human history, he says, the most important moment in human history. And then you see lots of people with their goggles on, taking place in 2024. And look at, here it comes. The eclipse is coming. It's coming. It's coming. And you see, okay, we get some military shots here and everybody's taking a look, waiting for the eclipse. And again, Donald Trump's social team having some fun on this. And so you see it, this moment in time, it's coming. Why do I have a feeling it's going to be him? It's just funny, okay? Look at this. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a sense of humor for his team. I will credit them with that. We will save America. So a political message there from Donald Trump. Biden also had a political message. I don't know, Drew, do you have this one? He was out there on the balcony at the White House above the Rose Garden, and he wanted to remind people to put their glasses on. Hey, good public service announcement. He said, enjoy the eclipse, but play it safe. Don't be silly. So perhaps a little bit of a jibe at Donald Trump, who last time there was an eclipse, and it wasn't one quite like this, but he went out there and kind of squinted at the sun and didn't wear the goggles. So anyway, quite a day. We got a lot going on all around the world. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene says, when you couple this together with the earthquake from the other day, we've got a real sign from God, whatever you want to call it. I will say this, the ground is shifting. The polls are proving that America and Americans have had it. They've just had it with Joe Biden and the establishment. And, he can promise this, that, and the other. And people are like, I'm sorry. You know what? You had your chance. You had your chance. You blew it, buddy. You blew it. Welcome to the show. I am Trish Regan. Good to have you here. If you're joining us for the very first time, make sure that you subscribe, you hit the bell, you hit a thumbs up, you share, you comment, all of this stuff. We're thrilled to have you here as part of the community, which is growing steadily, day by day, viewer by viewer. And it's thanks to you guys pushing this show out every day. I so appreciate it. We have big news, though, I want to get to at this moment. Even CNN is at the point where it can't completely, totally ignore reality. As much as it tries, maybe it's the eclipse, maybe it's the earthquake from the other day. Suddenly, they're actually talking some sense, or at least having a guest on one of their programs that makes some sense. I told you last week about this Judge Merchan, Laura Loomer, who's been all over this story. She was here as a guest the other day, and she told me, no, it's Trish, it's Merchan. I keep wanting to say merchant. But anyway, Judge Merchan, he has a daughter, and this daughter actually makes her living by, working with Democrats. Hey, you know what? I guess it's an honest living for some. Some of you may doubt that, but you know what? That's her job. She's a strategist, and she works for these Democrat campaigns, and she brings in a lot of money. Like, she's fundraising for them with social media campaigns, with email campaigns, all this kind of stuff. Like for Adam Schiff and Kamala Harris. And so, okay, she's got her gig, and you might say she's entitled to that, but wouldn't it make sense to you if you were the judge in the Trump hush money story, this saga, the one with Stormy Daniels? Wouldn't you think that maybe it's sort of inappropriate that your daughter is a fundraiser for Democrats and has quite literally fundraised off of every little nuance that's going on in the trial that you're about to make a decision on? I mean, wouldn't that kind of just strike you as a little bit of a problem, a little bit of an ethical breach? Seems that way to me. Apparently not to Judge Merchan. I mean, I'm just looking at this, guys, and there's so much wrong here. But let's just start here with this. The judge that's going to hear this case has a daughter who clearly has a bias. And even if nothing else, wouldn't you just say this? The judge doesn't exactly look squeaky clean because of who his family relation is. I'm not the only one saying this. I want you to hear this judge from New York who went on to CNN and told CNN straight to the anchor reporter's face there that this is not looking so good. Take a peek.
And they've put together a composite of issues that would cause me a little bit of pause. And I can explain all the various things that they've put together. The main focus of this motion, as opposed to the previous one a year ago, which the judge denied, is on the daughter's line of work. As you already said, the daughter does work with many, many high-profile Democratic candidates. She works on their social media. They put out a post, they get contributions. She, as an owner, gets a percentage of those contributions. So there is a statute in New York which says a judge must disqualify himself if a person known by the judge to be within the 6th degree of relationship, and a daughter is the 1st degree, has an interest that could be substantially affected by the outcome of the proceeding. So the question here is this daughter likely to profit, to benefit from the outcome of this proceeding? And you have to understand, it's not actual conduct that's worrisome, it's the appearance to a reasonable person that this judge cannot be fair and impartial given that relationship. So ordinarily, I would think that a benefit financially would be to a spouse because they share the income. This is an independent adult daughter. They don't share income. But according to this statute, the judge must recuse if she would substantially benefit from the outcome. So that's one thing that concerned me. But if you add to that a few other facts that are of concern, at least to me, was the judge's original contribution to President Biden 4 years ago, which he made himself, very small contribution, $35.
Yeah, I think it was $10, right?
$35, I'm told, $35. A small contribution, but he made it through ActBlue himself on the internet. He did give an interview where he said he wouldn't comment on the case, but then he said he's been intensely preparing and he wants to be fair and impartial, and justice is important. He and his daughter discussed the former president's use of social media, which the judge condemned in that discussion, and the daughter reported on it. The Office of Court Administration said the daughter's Twitter account ended a year ago, so any recent posts on that were not from the daughter, and I kind of wondered why the Office of Court Administration was defending the daughter. So there, if you put all these together, is my point, it's certainly enough that maybe a reasonable person could have a doubt about impartiality. So I think it's kind of a serious motion. I realize it's 10 days before the trial and don't expect it to be granted.
Oh, gosh. If it's not granted, though, you understand what it does? I mean, you heard her say it affects people's perception of how impartial the judge is or isn't, period. And to me, that's everything, right? Because you need to have faith in the system. You can't have a system where people don't believe anything that happens or they just assume it all gets down to politics, which is what Americans believe, frankly, right now. I mean, look, they haven't been able to stick anything on them. And they keep coming back and they keep trying. And then they're going to try with this guy who's clearly biased. And we know his political bias, and his daughter is benefiting financially. I didn't even realize that about the 6 degrees of separation. I mean, it seems a little bit onerous, right? Like if you know anyone in your 6 degrees that's actually benefiting off of something, that's pretty strong. Well, this girl, she's pushing $93 million, allegedly, according to the New York Post. The clients of this woman, well, they raised a lot of money off of the Stormy Daniels thing and a few other cases along the way. So it makes it really, really awkward. And then you combine in a whole bunch of other things. You heard her mention the tweet. You know, Laura's been all over that story, as I told you. And the daughter says, well, that Twitter account has been closed. We don't know the answer on that, but the whole thing just certainly seems suspicious. And you know what? You don't even need to go there. I'll tell you, this is pretty simple. Ladies and gentlemen, you got a judge whose daughter works for Adam Schiff and Kamala Harris and the DNC. And therefore, this guy should not be presiding over this case. End of story. It's very clear cut. You want to factor in his contribution to Biden and the rest of it. Okay, you can go on. But you've got something there, and it's not acceptable, and it's not right. And Americans should be speaking up, because how can we possibly trust this? Let's assume you hate Trump, okay? Let's go with that. You can't stand the guy, and you want him to go away forever. Do you really want this judge to be the one to do it? Because you know that everybody's going to say, well, that was biased. That was political. He was the guy whose daughter makes her living off of fundraising for Adam Schiff, and by the way, was able to raise a whole ton of money off of that one. And we are back. You know, I'm going to blame that one on the eclipse. That was really interesting, guys. Did you see that? I hope you're still with me because we've been in the middle of a live stream and then all of a sudden the camera shot went down and I'm talking. And I don't know if you heard this. I was like, hey, Drew, our producer, hey, you know, just text me, shoot me a note, let me know what's going on. So he called me and we just had to reset the camera. So again, like I said, crazy things happen. We got an eclipse going on and here I am saying, hey, Judge, buddy, you got an ethical violation. It's a huge ethical violation. Your daughter is making way too darn much money off of none other than, she doesn't exist really in the same way, shape, or form without the ability to fundraise off of her dad's case. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, people. I'm sorry. This is a very clear-cut situation. He needs to recuse himself, or somebody does. Now, what does it mean if he does get recused? You heard the judge go on CNN, another retired judge go on CNN, and her view was, look, here we are just a few days out from the case. It's probably not going to happen, but it could happen. It should happen. And if it does happen, all that means is that they've got to go back. They got to find a new judge. And so he buys a little bit more time. They, of course, are deliberately trying to time all these things so that he cannot campaign, that he's going to get stuck in all this litigation. And as much as they try that, I got to tell you, it keeps backfiring. It's like this boomerang effect, really significant boomerang effect, because every time he's in trouble, well, what do you know? We get another poll that says he's doing even better. So if I'm him, I'm like, okay, you guys bring it on. America sees how tough, how strong I am, because I'm willing to fight this in ways that you guys just never, ever anticipated. And speaking of fighting stuff, you know, this transgender sports issue has been front and center for quite some time. I mean, I think about Leah Thomas, for example, and how Leah Thomas was able to just blow away records for the NCAA when it came to swimming. And I think about, frankly, how wrong that is on just so many levels. I mean, as a mother of daughters, I look at it and say, how is that fair? Especially athletic daughters who want to have a career in college athletics. I mean, can you imagine if you're the one who loses out to somebody who had, let's just face it, a different set of advantages? I mean, if you're born as a male, I'm sorry, like this is embarrassing to have to even try and explain, but let me just say, like, suffice it to say, you got a different set of hormones, which is going to power you in those early years. Yeah, even in those early years and then through puberty. So if you change later on, you know what? It's not the same, okay? It's just not the same as being a girl your entire life. Well, some colleges are starting to recognize this. Breaking today, we got news that a group that governs smaller colleges has announced a policy that effectively bans transgenders from competing in women's sports, with the idea being that this is just not fair. Let me go to the full statement for you. This is coming into us just momentarily, a few moments ago, this particular story from AP. But basically, let me help read the statement. Drew, have you got it as well? We'll just put it up there for everybody to see. The National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, the governing body for mostly small colleges, announced a policy Monday that essentially bans transgender athletes from women's sports. The NAIA's council presidents approved a policy in a 20-0. So pretty fantastic, right? Unanimous vote on Monday. And it basically it is a big deal because you get 83,000 athletes that fall under this category, the NAIA. And it's the first time, thank goodness, a college sports organization has actually done anything like this. I mean, finally, somebody's willing to speak up for the girls. You know, if I'm the Dems right now, I want them to take this off the table because I don't think it's helping me as a Democrat, right? For sure. Anyway, they keep going. I think actually that Biden had a serious big blunder with the whole Transgender Visibility Day being on Easter Sunday, right before the election. I think that was just his pure stupidity. I really don't think that this issue helps them. I think this is one that you get a lot of people on the left that gravitate More to the right on this. According to the transgender participation policy, the AP article continues, all athletes may participate in NAIA-sponsored male sports, but only athletes whose biological sex is female and have not begun hormone therapy will be allowed to participate in women's sports. Have you noticed? Have you noticed? You don't see things going the other way. It's not like a girl is saying who transitions to become a man. It's not like she, then he is suddenly making a mad dash to join the boys, college track team. Right? Mad dash, no pun intended, right? Because he's not going to win in that scenario. So it's not fair. It's absolutely not fair in any way, shape, or form. And you know who gets this? You know who's been all over this from the beginning? And I know he doesn't get as much credit these days because, well, he decided to take on Donald Trump in the primary and got nowhere on it for reasons we can discuss another day. But he was spot on this. Ron DeSantis, ladies and gentlemen, a college athlete himself. Take a listen.
Excuse me, Dr. Latipo actually brought this up a little bit earlier. If I remember correctly, I think there was an appeal 2 years ago, but you're a father of 2 little girls. And what is your take on transgender females playing sports with other...
So reporters asking him basically what he
my
thinks
take
it
is evidenced by when I put my John Hancock on the legislation 3 years ago saying that in Florida, girls have a right to compete against other girls in competitions that have integrity and that are fair. And you can't have a biological male butt into these competitions and win the trophies. That's wrong. And so I think that that's important. I think what we did is right. And, sometimes people will act like, that not allowing a biological male is somehow an imposition on that athlete. And they don't care about the imposition you're imposing on all these female athletes. I mean, you think about the training and everything that goes into that. And we did, when you had I think it was the 500-yard freestyle where you had the swimmer from Pennsylvania who had been a men's swimmer, I think, for 3 years, then flipped to the women's team, and then won, quote unquote, that. The second place finisher was actually a swimmer from Sarasota. I think she was at University of Virginia or one of the schools up there. And that's someone that's probably trained for years and years at this, because you don't just get to be competing at NCAA just rolling out of bed. I mean, this is something you're doing when you're young and you're through middle school, high school most likely. And so you're doing that, and then you end up getting a second place finish knowing that if they had just done it by the rules and had women competing against each other, you would have been the national champion. To me, that bothers me. I mean, I want people to know that the hard work will pay off and that you have a right to do that, apply that in competition that is fair, that has integrity to it. That's really what it's all about. And the message that it sends is say, you know what, you do everything right, you work your tail off, you get in a position, and then all of a sudden you can have just the championship taken away from you. And why is it being taken away from these women and these girls who are competing in these competitions? It's doing it because the powers that be in these institutions like the NCAA, some of the high school, not in Florida, but some of these high school, they just don't have the courage to put their foot down and say no. They don't have the courage to do what's right because they're worried about being politically incorrect. Yes, they will get attacked by different groups, of course, probably a lot of media organizations. But that is not what leadership is all about. Leadership's about doing what's right. And I think
normally I don't play that much of sound, but I just feel like it was that important to hear his response, especially on a day like today, where I think we can take heart that some people understand it's the right thing to do. So again, this governing body coming out for college sports at small college campuses and saying enough is enough. 20-0, they voted and said that they now have in place a policy that will prevent transgender athletes from competing in women's sports, because you know what? Somebody's going to actually stick up for the girls. I'm blown away by this. I mean, I was just looking at a governor Recently, I want to say it's Wisconsin, but forgive me, I might have that actually wrong. Let me double check it. But it was just appalling to me because the governor was signing in a bill and saying, "Oh, yay, yay, yay! You know, we're going to allow transgenders to compete in girls' sports, and we're never going to not allow this." And it was a man, and he was surrounded by women, and the optics of it were kind of insane. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's not a good look. Because women ought to be protecting women. They ought to be looking out for their daughters. Why are we more concerned about the 0.01% of the population? You know, because they might feel bad, and then collect all the trophies. I'll tell you who's going to feel bad is the girl who's been working her tail off since she was 6 years old to actually win that award in the first place. Meanwhile, another new study, this just coming out literally this moment, I want to share it with you, out of the UK, who they're just looking at this and starting to say, wait a second, you know, we need to reassess. They're that much further ahead than us. They kind of had the whole transgender thing creep into their society, I would say a little bit earlier, and they're now pulling back. So there's this long-awaited review of mental health issues and how you address those mental health issues in young children, including teenagers and people who are considering and contemplating possibly changing their gender. According to this report, and this is coming to us from the Telegraph right now, the concern is that many children who think they are transgender disproportionately, quote, have mental health issues such as a difficult family situation or they've suffered from abuse. They are also more likely to be neurodiverse. And so there's a danger, it says, in putting them on this path to change their gender. And so what is coming out of the UK is a long-awaited report. This is from the NHS saying that effectively it's not a good idea and it's warning against. That's going to be the headline, ladies and gentlemen, that you don't rush to change your gender before you've exhausted every single other thing. I mean, hello, this is what I mean. Like the world has gotten so insane that somehow we think that if you don't fit in as a teenager, and believe me, you know what? A lot of people don't fit in as a teenager. They may never fit in society, whatever. You know what? Like that's just sometimes, you know, we go through tough things. Everybody goes through tough things as a teenager. Some people, they have it harder than others, but is the immediate sort of go-to move to say, oh, well, we got to change your gender and everything will all be right? I don't think so. That is about not to mention, these are things that cannot be reversed. Again, I am embarrassed to have to even explain this to people. But, you know, Apple, the pregnant man emoji, it just doesn't fly. I'm sorry. This is just getting to the point of no return. And now they're realizing it in the UK. Now small colleges are realizing it. Pretty soon, the NCAA is going to realize it. Everybody's going to realize it, okay? Because it's not fair. It's not right. And it's really dangerous, frankly, for the young kids involved. Really, really dangerous. I'm sorry. You take your political agenda somewhere else. Thank you very much. So go Ron DeSantis for being on the right side of that one. Joe Biden, on the wrong side of this one, is struggling significantly with his base for a whole variety of reasons. A whole variety of reasons from the border, as you well know, to, well, just the pure reality of his age and the concern that many people feel for him because they think he's in over his head and maybe suffering from beginning stages of perhaps dementia. I'm not a doctor, just like I'm not a scientist, right? So, you know, I am giving you full disclosure on those things. But Joe Biden is doing some things that are, in my estimation, at least from an economic standpoint, extremely irresponsible with our economy. He wants to print money. He wants to spend your taxpayer dollars how he sees fit, including by flying illegal migrants to whatever country, or forgive me, whatever county he thinks needs representation. I guess for the census, I mean, I don't know what the thinking is on that one or why he's picking these particular areas and then getting all mad when Texas dares to send some people to New York City. You ought to thank him, right? Oh, you saved me a bill. I didn't have to fly him in the middle of the night. What do you know? Well, Biden's having another sort of epiphany. He needs to get to that base. The youth, they don't really like him. No one really likes him, really. But the youth definitely is really not so inspired by Joe Biden. So what better way to do it than offer another handout. I mean, isn't that just the answer? You just keep offering these groups handouts. Maybe like at some point you'll get some momentum. That's his thinking. So no matter how many times the Supreme Court tells him, no, you're not going to be able to do this on student loans, Biden goes back for another round. Here's the latest and greatest. It's not happening. He's not going to get the money. And if he did, you think college costs are bad now? Just wait until Biden starts handing out another $5,000 per person. This is his plan. He wants $5,000 more going to anyone who has student loans. Take a peek. There you go. During an appearance in Wisconsin, President Biden said 10 million borrowers could seek debt relief of at least $5,000. And this is his idea, ladies and gentlemen, his highly irresponsible idea to rally his base, the youth that can't stand him, that has no use for him, and that probably will not show up to vote for him. He's there in Wisconsin, big swing state, where he's neck and neck with Donald Trump, trying to see if he can get any of those university kids to stick around for a few more years of university. He'll pay for it. Hey, it's on Uncle Joe. Why not? Do we have this sound?
From day one, my administration has been committed to fixing the broken student loan system and making sure higher education is a ticket to the middle class, not a barrier. My administration has approved debt cancellation for 4 million Americans through various actions. And today, I'm announcing new plans that would cancel student debt for millions more. In total, these plans would cancel some or all student debt for 30 million Americans when combined with everything we've done so far. To find out how these plans may impact you, visit studentaid.gov.
I just don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I think Joe Biden has jumped the shark, as Fonzie used to say. Okay, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because when the government puts more money into these things, all it does is inflate the cost of education, right? Because when you have free money, suddenly you don't care what anything costs. And that's what they've done for college kids all over America. They've given them all kinds of loans. They've given them all kinds of handouts. And they've basically said, here you go, here's a blank check. What do you think would happen if you got a blank check and the government said, hey, go purchase any house you want. Any house you want. We're going to go for the biggest, nicest house, whatever. And what is going to happen? The prices on every single house, they're going to go up, up, and away. Well, that's what happened with colleges. Okay, so there's all this demand suddenly because the government made it that attractive. And so when people look at the numbers and they say, why are college costs so much higher? Why is it so much more? Why is it so outpacing everything else, along with healthcare, which is the other industry that outpaces everything else? And the reason is, well, the government's there supporting it. It's government money, so it's not a real market. Kids aren't saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to have to pay this back. Me, on the other hand, when I went to school and I took a little break in between because of the whole opera thing, some of you know about that. Some of you don't, but I was a singer. And so I started in a conservatory, and then I was pursuing this career as an opera singer and made a decision to go back to school. And I'm like, okay, when I went back to school, I was like, this is on me. I have to pay for this. I mean, my heart was in my throat. I was signing on the dotted line for my loans. And I thought, oh my gosh, I better get a really good job. And I worked through school. I was in school. I took my grades very seriously. I remember applying to Goldman Sachs and I had a 3.98 out of 4.0 for my GPA. And the guy I was interviewing with was like, whoa, wow, 3.98. But what I had that a lot of other students didn't have was sort of just this intense pressure of knowing I got to pay this stuff back. And I think a lot of kids, you're young, whatever, your parents are paying or Uncle Joe's paying, and you don't get that you're on the hook for it. Everybody needs to understand you're on the hook. You know what? There's no free lunch. And this little $5,000 whoop-de-doo, all you're going to do is increase college tuition prices by another $5,000. And I don't think you're going to get any more votes out of any of this, Joe. I really don't. People are not going to vote for you just because of this. If anything, they look at it and say, he didn't get it done. He promised this. He promised us. He told us. Remember on the campaign trail, he was going to do this. And yet, not happening. By the way, indulge me. I'm going to be a little bit catty for a second, but can we go back and look at that video, Drew? Because what is going on with his eyebrows, ladies and gentlemen? I told you. You know what? Indulge me. When he lifts them. It's like they don't come back down. So here we're watching. He's talking about, my administration has approved debt cancellation for 4 million Americans. The problem, of course, is that there you go. That's the picture. That's the picture. Can we pause it there, Drew? What is going on with Biden's eyebrows? I ask. Here's the thing. He's trying to get this debt relief for millions of Americans. The Supreme Court's already shut him down. He's like, I'm going back at it. I'm going back at it. Like, you're going to defy the Supreme Court, buddy? I mean, really, come on. And I dare I say that the dermatologist is going a little overboard there, Joe Biden, because those are some high eyebrows. I'm thinking that's a little Botox, maybe just a little. What do I know, right? Anyway, Joe Biden, this is not going to work. You can keep trying. You know what is working? Some amazing dollars that the Trump campaign just raised. I'm going to get to that in a second, but before I do, we talk about the student loans, we talk about inflation, we talk about the problems, right, with the economy right now, and it's very clear to me that we've got some massive, massive challenges from a policy perspective. You know who else it's clear to? My friends over at Jobs Creators Network. I was just talking with Alfredo over the weekend, and Alfredo, he runs this. He's fantastic. And if you haven't seen my interview with him, I encourage you to go back and take a look at that. We were actually talking about the role Hispanics would be taking on in this election cycle, because they're going to just be massive. And this is something the Job Creators Network is very much in tune with. And they have to be, right? Because they're representing small business owners all over America. And small business owners, they're the engine of this great economy. They always have been, and hopefully they always will be. But there are a lot of people that really don't like business owners, and some people that maybe just like the really, really big business owners. That would be the kinds of businesses that can contribute to your campaign. And so I think that Joe Biden has a lot of ends with big business. Big business isn't too happy with him either. A big report on that in the New York Times just the other day, because they don't really like his policy either. But it's small business owners that I think are really disadvantaged, or put at a disadvantage in this particular environment, because they don't have the lobbying money of the big businesses, and they definitely don't have the sort of top of agenda kind of stuff that Biden wants to promote, right? Frankly, I'm just going to be very, very candid with you. He seems to be very anti-business, almost socialist, quasi-communist, frankly, at times. Well, join Job Creators Network, because they can help you cut through a lot of this noise. If you're a local business owner and you just kind of want to communicate with other business owners in your community, or if you want to take on a bigger role and speak up for change, these are the guys that can help you do it. Go to joinjcn.com, joinjcn.com. But like I said, they're really looking out for everyone. They're looking out for the values that I think, if you're watching this show, you probably care about too. Turning now to the money that's coming in. So, you know all about the Radio City Music Hall, big shindig, the fundraiser that they had there just a week or two ago, and they raised some $25 million, a really, really big deal. Everybody was so excited, high-fiving each other, and no sooner was this going down than Joe Scarborough was trying to highlight how little money, he's an anchor over on MSNBC in the morning, he was trying to highlight how little money Trump had. Well, there are a few things that just went down over the weekend that really kind of make him look pretty shameful. And if I were him, I'd be kind of embarrassed. Not that he's embarrassed. I'm sure he so doesn't care. But I want you to at least, I've showed you this before. So if you've seen it, bear with me. If you haven't, you need to watch it, because this is the guy on Morning Joe making fun of Trump for not having any money for his campaign.
I always tell my kids, if things look like they're too good to be true, they're too good to be true. And if you're looking at something that just doesn't make sense, there's a reason. And here, we're looking at something that makes no sense. This guy's getting crazier by the day. He's got no money. The campaign is just broke. People don't want to give money. He's down 200,000 contributors to where he was this time in the cycle 4 years ago. Biden's raised $71 million. People are begging, literally begging. And any idiot that runs some podcast, they're begging. They're calling contributors and saying, how can I help? I want to write checks for Joe Biden. Put that number up again. What did Tip O'Neill say about money in politics? It's the mother's milk of politics. And right now, Joe Biden's got all he wants. And Donald Trump is a little thirsty.
I'm not so sure about that. If it is the mother's milk of politics, which, by the way, I don't agree with, especially in this modern day, I would just say then Biden might start to get a little bit worried. So you saw the $71 million that Joe Scarborough posted. Well, that was prior to the $25 million event there in New York City. So if my math is correct, you're looking at $96 million bucks. So just shy of $100 million there for the Biden campaign. Now, if Joe's math is correct and Trump had 33 back when he voiced this thing, well, let's factor in what Lara Trump was able to bring in since she started. And that was, wow. Oh my goodness. Well, my math is not even right. You know what? I thought that number, Drew, was going to be 54, but it was actually 65.6 million. So let's just be conservative and call it 65. So now you're looking at $98 million, ladies and gentlemen. So that's $2 million ahead of where Joe Biden is. And then, dun-dun-dun, guess what happened over the weekend in Mar-a-Lago? I'll let the Fox reporter take it away.
Trump is calling it the biggest night in fundraising history. The fundraiser at hedge fund billionaire John Paulson's home raked in over $50 million, according to the RNC. That's up from early estimates of $43 million and nearly double what President Biden raised at his New York City fundraiser. Wow.
If he had 98 going into the weekend and he just added another 50, we're looking at $148 million. Let's just round up and call it 150, okay? And we'll give Joe the benefit of the doubt. He's got 96 million, but we'll call him 100. You're looking at 100 to 150, and I'm telling you, Trump doesn't even need the money the way Joe does. The reason he doesn't need the money in the same way, shape, or form is, one, he's got that social media team. You saw that eclipse meme that they made earlier. I mean, these guys are good, right? So he's got that. He's got just, in general, everyday folks that aren't on his team, but are meme makers that are out there pushing him on social media. You have sort of this groundswell moment. So when he goes in and he does these big arena style events around the country with these rallies, he just gets enormous tune-in on networks, online, and then, of course, at the events themselves. And at these events, they use them as opportunities to rally more and more people and to get them to sign up to vote if they are not already registered. So these are big pockets of opportunities, and you're just able to kind of have more, how do they say, bang for your buck, right, with all of these events. So a big, big deal, and really just remarkable, really, really, really remarkable to see. And so when I look at the money now, and I'm coming at it from the viewpoint that you don't even need as much money. I mean, maybe you do because you get so many legal bills. There you go. Okay. So you get legal bills, right, to pay. And that's, of course, an issue. And so that takes and eats up some of the capital. But overall, he's now in a much better position than Joe Biden. Look, it could flip in the next couple of weeks. We'll see, because now the pressure is going to be on Biden. Oh, you got to get more money. But at the end of the day, I will tell you this. Donald Trump won in 2016, not because he had more money than Hillary Clinton, but because people preferred him as a candidate. And I think that if he succeeds in 20, can you believe this? We're in 2024. It's going to be for the same exact reason. We are still waiting on who is going to be the vice presidential pick. There's a lot of names out there. It's a lot, and I look at that and say, hey, this is really good because we need a deep bench. We need a great bench. You just saw Ron DeSantis. He's been out ahead of the whole transgender sports issue. He's certainly somebody that I think some people are still keeping an eye on. You got Marco Rubio also down in Florida. Why Marco Rubio is very connected with the Hispanic community. And there are a lot of stories now that are suggesting via the poll data that Hispanics might ultimately be the ones to decide this election. They're part of that group in the middle, but they're leaning right. They're leaning right, and they're leaning towards Trump. Not exactly what the Democrats would have anticipated. But, this is happening over and over and over again. I mean, we're seeing it in Pennsylvania as well, where they had these strongholds and they just anticipated and thought, oh, well, we got this community, we got this district, we got that. And guess what? They don't. They don't have it. They don't have it, and I don't think they're going to get it. And the reason is that ship has sailed because they're not connected to the everyday working American anymore. I mean, it's almost like the party's just sort of flipped. It's like the sort of traditional blue-collar Democrat has now become the Trump supporter. And that's going to take him far in a lot of places that the Democrats used to take for granted. And I understand why it's happening. I think you understand why it's happening too. It's because people don't feel like they have the same opportunity or advantages right now anymore. And the truth is they don't. It's harder and harder to achieve the American dream. It's harder and harder to look towards something like retirement, which is one of the reasons why I started 76 Research. You guys who know me well, I hope you're part of the team over at 76. If not, make sure you go and you sign up. 76research.com. We are out with another report. Of course, this Friday, actually, we've got an update coming for you on our inflation protected portfolio that I really would love you to read. Model portfolios there. We got the 76 report there and a lot of ideas for investing. If you want to just go check out the free stuff, I encourage you to go register at 76research.com. My financial letter there with Rob Horton, a wonderful friend and colleague now. I'm thrilled to be on board with him. He and I have talked for many, many years. He's managed billions of dollars on Wall Street, and here I am doing the financial reporting thing. And we've talked for many years about the sort of inherent bias of all these institutions, not just government, which is obvious, but what you're seeing on Wall Street and then what you're seeing within the media space, specifically even the financial media space. And believe me, I know I've worked at Bloomberg, I've worked at Fox Business, and I've worked at CNBC. I also worked at MarketWatch. So the reality is this exists, and I know it, he knows it, and it's the reason why we teamed up for 76research.com. It's my company that I'm thrilled in conjunction with him to have started. So go there, join, make sure that you're signed up for our emails, 76research.com, because you deserve a chance at a better future. You really do. And this is so important to me and so much why I started this. I want to turn right now to the challenges that we've got going on there in the Middle East, which are just ever increasing. And Joe Biden doesn't know what to do about it. He absolutely, positively doesn't know what to do about it. I mean, don't forget, this is the guy that after what went down in October, and we're looking at the 6-month anniversary now, was right out in front of the story and saying, you know what, we stand with Israel, etc. And now, because of some very noisy, dissonant members of his party that have his base all rallied and riled up, well, guess what? Joe is not as committed to Israel, or at least is not spouting the same kind of rhetoric that he used to, nor is his administration overall. I mean, Kamala's out there every chance she could get, right? Saying we need to do more for Gaza. Well, I want you to see a portion of this interview. This is with Margaret Brennan on CBS, Face the Nation. This is John Kirby sitting down with her, the Pentagon spokesperson, and now he's actually over at the White House as well. Let's listen to him and his thoughts on Israel, basically saying that we're going to tie any money that we are giving to Israel or allotting for Israel, we're going to tie it to making sure that civilians are protected. Listen.
I'm not going to get ahead of the president or decisions he might or might not make going forward. He was very clear in his call with the prime minister that if we don't see some changes in their policies in Gaza and the way they're prosecuting operations, we're going to have to make some changes of our own.
You do think these are Israeli policies then to block aid?
They get to decide how they prosecute this war. It's their operation. We just talked about them pulling troops out and what that means. They get to decide how they prosecute operations. We get to decide how we're going to react to that and how we're going to administer our own policy with respect to Gaza. We make those decisions, and the president was clear with the prime minister. If there's not changes, if things don't get better, then we're going to have to make changes of our own.
So basically, we're making sure that this aid is tied to any kind of civilian help that they can offer there in Gaza. It has a lot of people sort of saying, okay, wait, is this just an excuse? Like, are we trying to pull back? Are we pulling away? Are we trying to temper our enthusiasm for Israel? Joe was asked about this, and he didn't appreciate it very much. You got to watch the whole clip here, guys, because he starts to walk away, and just when you think it's over, it's not over. This is a reporter on Friday. They had this little gaggle, right? So he gets a mic effectively shoved in his face, and the reporter's asking these questions. And the reporter's like, hey, are you still as committed to Israel? Take a look.
On Israel, aid to Israel, Mr. President.
Pardon me?
Did you threaten to stop military aid to Israel?
I asked them to do what
Questions,
they're
did
doing.
you threaten to stop military aid to Israel?
Are you abandoning Israel? What do you stop, man? Are you abandoning Israel?
It's really hard to make out. So I'm gonna do the translation for you. So he started to walk away there, and the reporter's shouting, "Are you abandoning Israel?" And he finally looks back, and he says, "Where are you from, man?" So that was kind of weird, right? I mean, he's the president that's really supposed to be so lefty and embracing diversity and embracing everybody from every country. And then he shouts out, "Where are you from, man?" I'm not really sure what that was about. I don't know where the reporter was from. I heard a slight accent, but it could be British. It could be just an international accent, or it could be Israeli. Was he trying to say, hey, you're from Israel? I don't know what that was about. I just think it was a weird thing for him, of all people, to say. His aides had to have been like, oh my gosh. It shows you his temper. Like, the guy's got a temper. We've heard that for years. Now the word on the street is he's yelling at his staff every second. He's yelling because he's upset. He's upset because the world is closing in. I mean, everything he has done has just been absolutely positively wrong. And now he's got Israel that he's got to deal with as well. In the meantime, you got Putin out there threatening World War III. I mean, can you imagine a worse set of facts? Can you possibly imagine that? It's like everything that could go wrong does go wrong. A total eclipse of the sun, so to speak. Listen, it is just messed up. And it's throughout the party. And it's not just Joe. Listen, Hillary's taken it as well. Hillary Clinton goes and visits her alma mater, Wellesley. And she goes there thinking she's going to be, a big, what deal. And, well, she's a big deal, all right, but perhaps not in the way that she had thought or wanted. She got heckled. I mean, join the crowd, Hillary. I'm glad that now you feel it. I've been to my alma mater and had to deal with a few things as well. You know what? It just goes with the territory, left or right, because you can't say anything these days. Well, they don't like her very much at Wellesley anymore. And they made that quite apparent. Let's go to the heckler in the crowd, and then you're going to see the bigger crowd. But let's start off first. Drew, if you have this heckler shouting out at Hillary Clinton, just trying to give a nice little speech at her alma mater, Wellesley College.
I perfectly happy to meet you after this event and talk with you, but we're going to go on with our discussion. So, Ariel, if you have any other questions. Can I add something?
As a journalist, something what was frustrating to me as a young student was people don't always want to listen. But the thing is, you don't have to agree with what everyone on this panel or what anybody says today. The point is, if anything, you listen and you say,
Just have her taken out. Let's keep watching.
It helps you corroborate and confirm your own beliefs. So I know there are students here who are frustrated. We understand it's emotional.
Can I just jump?
So Hillary didn't really have anything to say. So she just let the moderator get up there and do all the talking. Did you see that? She just sat there and took it, I guess. And the moderator kind of tried to make things better. And the funny part about it is, we don't always have to agree. We don't always have to, as they haul the woman out of the auditorium. I mean, it's just kind of amusing, sort of funny. And the truth is, no, we don't always have to agree. And I would say this. It's never appropriate, really, to heckle. I mean, either side. I mean, there's a better way to do this. You don't have to be the screaming lunatic in the auditorium to be heard, right? But anyway, she wasn't the only one. There were lots of screaming people there on campus, and I think we have a picture of everybody outside. So Hillary no sooner dealt with that she then had to walk outside and get greeted by this group of students who were pro-Palestinian protesters. And then there was this little thing on the local television news. And the reporter does a good job kind of breaking it down, just how much animosity there was felt, right? That you could just feel it. It was very permeable there on campus in Wellesley, Mass. Let's listen.
Well, some students are not happy to have Hillary Clinton on campus. They're handing out these pamphlets and saying they have no interest in following in her footsteps. A group of students protesting outside a woman-led democracy summit at Wellesley College featuring former Secretary of State and Wellesley alum Hillary Clinton. The protesters handing out pamphlets calling her Wellesley's most beloved war criminal, saying she has blood on her hands. They're condemning Clinton's legacy while the college launches a new center named after her to prepare the next generation of civic leaders. Wellesley administration releasing a statement on the protest saying, quote, "I encourage all who participate in activism to follow the demonstration policy and be mindful of our code of student conduct so that you remain safe for yourself and for our community." Here's what one of the protest organizers had to say.
We have been told pretty repeatedly from administration that any sort of interruption.
Can you pause it for 1 second?
The event of,
I just want to say, do you notice how this young woman who's there to complain about Hillary is wearing a mask outside? I mean, there's a type, shall we say, ladies and gentlemen. There is a type, and there they are, alive and well, Wellesley College. Let's keep listening.
Speaking would result in an honor code, which could potentially be a suspension. We're also not allowed to bring signs inside. Basically, and we also have to stand behind specific barriers to protest the event.
Sessions.
Yeah, and not to mention, you know what? Nobody can hear you because you get your darn mask on. That kind of throws off the whole protest as well, doesn't it? Kind of dampens the mood, quite literally, softens the tone. Anyway, Hillary got heckled. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, the left has a problem. Its base does not like what's going down. Someone actually, forgive me, it might have been on MSNBC. It was like another one of those wake-up calls for the lefty media. Somebody pointed out recently, and I think this is fair, that you feel a lot of anti-Semitism coming out of these left-wing base sort of groups that are so against the traditional establishment. Look, I understand why you might be against the traditional establishment for the economic policies that have led to, frankly, generations being unable to achieve what they should be able to achieve. I mean, that is bad policy that's put a lot of people in a really, really bad spot. But to pick this as the number one issue is just really interesting. I think it's going to be extremely hard for the Democrat Party to be able to navigate this. They're not as nimble as Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is definitely nimble. I mean, he's taken some heat today. People wanted to get the national, ban on abortions, and he's refusing to do that. Again, sort of proving and I think showcasing some of this nimbleness, if you would. But it makes sense in that he said, okay, it should go back to the states. But isn't that actually what he wanted originally? A lot of conservatives wanted it to go back to the states initially. So it would be somewhat hypocritical of him to say, okay, now I'm going to order a national ban. If you actually believe in the integrity of the law that you saw your Supreme Court rule over, and when they kicked it back to the states, if you're going to suddenly change that, it becomes more complicated. And so I think he's actually able to negotiate a lot of these challenging spaces. I mean, IVF was another example of that down in Alabama, where Donald Trump is like kind of throwing things on their head. I mean, the View didn't know what to make of this. They could only assume that Donald Trump only wanted to have more affluent white children because it's, to their point, these are their words, the affluent white Americans that are trying to have kids and that use IVF. Therefore, Donald Trump okaying it and wanting it is just an example of more race challenges and issues, et cetera. I mean, I just, it's getting to the point where it's just disgusting to listen to this, but this is the narrative they're coming up with. He's nimble. He's able to kind of bounce back from these things. He'll have his work cut out for him, both with Ukraine and obviously Israel, if he gets the top gig, which, gosh, you look at these poll numbers, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how he doesn't get it right now. I mean, it's going to be tough. And I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, so to speak. I do think that Lara Trump and the lawyers that are working aggressively to make sure that we have fair opportunities in every single state, in every single district across this country, they got to do that groundwork first. They got to do the ballot harvesting as well. The Democrats play that game. We got to play it too. You fight fire with fire, okay? On this day of the eclipse when I'm in my hot orange outfit. Like fire with fire. Speaking of which, yes, thank you. I'm glad you like the orange. I'm glad you like my goggles and all that good stuff. One thing that I just think has been helping me tremendously, and I've been taking it now for several months, is Balance of Nature, one of our new sponsors on the show. And it's fantastic. I take the fruits and veggies, and I can get you 35% off, plus $10 off, plus free shipping. If you use code word Trish, make sure you use my code word, or you call them at 1-800-246-8751. Balance of Nature, fruits and veggies. You can go on their website, check it out. They have a tremendous history. They've been in business a long time, and so there's thousands and thousands of reviews. You don't have to take my word for it. Or my kid's music teacher. I think I told you guys, I got a phone call from him the other day, and he's like, hey, Trish, I was listening to your show. And I'm like, I didn't even know you listened to the show. And he said, I love Balance of Nature. I've been taking it for years, and I think it's phenomenal. I'm so excited that you've partnered with them. And I'm like, hey, I'm excited too, because I love the stuff. I feel good. And now I know I'm getting my fruits and veggies. My mom would be very happy because I don't have to spit my peas out behind the television like I used to as a kid. All right. So Balance of Nature, balanceofnature.com, code word Trish, you're 35% off, and $10. We'll put a link, I think, in this show as well for you. Boeing, oh my gosh, what is going on with Boeing? Thank goodness they're getting a new CEO. They kicked him out of the job just in time, it seems. Did you guys see this video? Southwest Airlines 737, their engine cover ripped off in the middle of takeoff. Take a look. Oh, so they're going down the runway. There you go, Southwest Airways. Somebody's taping this, right out their window. You get an engine cover that's just totally ripped off.
They're both gone.
And so they had to have this immediate emergency landing. Oh my goodness, it does not look good. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is terrible. This is really, what is going on? Pete Buttigieg, where are you when we need you? Aren't you like in charge of the skies and that sort of thing? We've had a few too many incidents, shall we say. Yeah, just a few. Do we have another angle on that, by the way, Drew? I think that we do. Lo and behold, there's another angle for you, ladies and gentlemen, of the Southwest Airlines 737 during takeoff, forced to have an emergency landing because of the engine cover ripping off. I mean, so you've got like open areas in the plane that, kids' stuffed animals are getting sucked out of. Reminder to wear your seatbelt. You've got the engine cover getting ripped off as you go down the runway. You get wheels falling off. What's happened? I mean, some people like to blame DEI. I I don't know. I mean, maybe the planes are just getting too old, but actually it's happened on you think about the MAX, right? That's the latest and greatest. So it's happening on old planes. It's happening on new planes. And you start to say, why is it happening so much? What's going on with Boeing? Well, the good news is the CEO is out of a gig. Bye-bye. He left, and they're looking for a new CEO, and they've got to actually have some better accountability. I mean, this is just really scary stuff. And anyone who flies on a regular basis, I mean, now you're looking and you're like, okay, what plane is it? I'm on a Boeing? There's another crazy video that I wanted to show you. If you haven't seen this, you need to take a look. There's a female pilot that just kind of lost it, had a total meltdown. I mean, as if flying was not scary enough. Imagine getting on a plane and then hearing this shtick from the pilot. Let's take a listen.
This is your captain speaking, but never like this.
I'll stop and we'll fly the airplane. Don't worry, I'm going to let my co-pilot fly it. He's a man. Okay?
It's a total meltdown. The pilot boarded in her street clothes and addressed the passengers over the intercom. Passenger Pam O'Neill couldn't believe what was happening.
She said, let's take a vote. How many of you would like to take off now with me dressed as I am, or would you prefer that I take 10 minutes to get changed into my cute little uniform? Then she started talking about her divorce and political candidates, and the minute she mentioned that, a gentleman stood up and just yelled, whoa, enough, you're scaring me.
Another passenger, Randy Reese, got up to leave and gave a running commentary on social media. Pilot also insulted a couple on board.
Did I offend you? Okay, so did I purposely offend you? I did. The answer is yes. Flight attendants, please disarm doors.
After 20 passengers insisted on getting off the United Airlines flight, the pilot quietly left the aircraft.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
I mean, really? I want to blame the eclipse. What is the world coming to? What is the world coming to? That was out of control. She was out of control. I would have been really nervous and anxious to get off that flight. So I applaud the passengers for speaking up. No one should have been put in that situation. You know, these airlines, they need to, one, do a better job working with Boeing to make sure that the flights are okay and that we don't have engines that are losing their covers in the middle of takeoff. We don't want to be losing doors in the middle of flights. And we don't want pilots who are clearly having nervous breakdowns before they go to fly the plane. I mean, is it too much to ask? I don't think so. I think something really strange has happened with this world, and it's high time that we all kind of try and get things right. All right, we have some breaking news that just came into us right now. New York appeals court denies the Trump motion to delay hush money trial, setting up the jury selection for next week. So we have just learned that the jury selection will begin next week. That was slated for April 15th. It looks like that is going to continue. Trump had filed a motion requesting that the judge in the hush money trial be recused as well, but it's unclear whether or not that actually is moving forward. It seems as though this judge, however, was weighing in on the others. So I do think that we got to get a little bit more information. This is just being reported courtesy of Fox News, a good reporter over there. I know her, Brooke Singman. She's writing that Trump's application to the New York Appellate Division First Department said that while jury selection is set to begin next week, quote, polling and quantitative analysis of media coverage shows that a fair and impartial jury cannot be selected right now based on prejudicial pretrial publicity. Well, I think that's probably a good point. I mean, it's very hard, given who he is, period, to get any kind of non-biased jury, especially in New York City. Anyway, this is Lizbeth Gonzalez made the decision here on Monday. Defendant's application for the stay of trial pending the determination of defendant's motion for change of venue is denied, she writes. Of course, last week, Judge Mershon, it came out that he basically has this massive conflict of interest. I was reporting on, I led the show with that as well today. And the Trump team has gone in with a 37-page memo and said, hey, you know what? This guy is biased and we ought to be able to, can we run the CNN soundbite again, Drew? Because this is important. This is a retired judge in the same area going on CNN and saying, you know what? Mershon has an issue. There is a conflict of interest here. And Mershon's, the response is to impose a gag order. How do you like that? Here we go.
And they've put together a composite of issues that would cause me a little bit of pause. And I can explain all the various things that they've put together. The main focus of this motion, as opposed to the previous one a year ago, which the judge denied, is on the daughter's line of work. As you already said, the daughter does work with many, many high-profile Democratic candidates. She works on their social media. They put out a post. They get contributions. She, as an owner, gets a percentage of those contributions. So there is a statute in New York which says a judge must disqualify himself if a person known by the judge to be within the 6th degree of relationship, and a daughter is the 1st degree, has an interest that could be substantially affected by the outcome of the proceeding. So the question here is this daughter likely to profit, to benefit from the outcome of this proceeding? And you have to understand, it's not actual conduct that's worrisome, it's the appearance to a reasonable person that this judge cannot be fair and impartial given that relationship. So ordinarily, I would think that a benefit financially would be to a spouse because they share the income. This is an independent adult daughter. They don't share income. But according to this statute, the judge must recuse if she would substantially benefit from the outcome. So that's one thing that concerned me. But if you add to that a few other facts that are of concern, at least to me, was the judge's original contribution to President Biden 4 years ago, which he made himself, very small contribution, $35.
Yeah, I think it was $10, right?
$35, I'm told, $35. A small contribution, but he made it through ActBlue himself on the internet. He did give an interview where he said he wouldn't comment on the case, but then he said he's been intensely preparing and he wants to be fair and impartial, and justice is important. He and his daughter discussed the former president's use of social media, which the judge condemned in that discussion, and the daughter reported on it. The Office of Court Administration said the daughter's Twitter account ended a year ago, so any recent posts on that were not from the daughter. Yeah. And I kind of wondered why the Office of Court Administration was defending the daughter. So there, if you put all these together, is my point, it's certainly enough that maybe a reasonable person could have a doubt about impartiality. So I think it's kind of a serious motion. I realize it's 10 days before the trial, and
it is a serious motion, and it just became even more serious, even more significant. Donald Trump is suing to have his trial moved. He is appealing the New York judge's gag order as well, and he wants a new venue for this trial. He is requesting that it be moved out of Manhattan, in part because, well, Manhattan is a very liberal place. And so this appeal basically includes the name of New York Supreme Court Justice Juan Mershon as a defendant. This is per the court records. They basically are trying to say, look, he can't get a fair trial there. And yet they had an emergency conference just moments ago. And the judge, Lisbeth Gonzalez, heard arguments from the Trump lawyer about this very liberal population there in Manhattan, and therefore saying, we can't get a fair jury situation because a recent survey of Manhattan residents showed that 61% believed Trump was guilty in the hush money case. And so the Trump attorney had asked that the trial be placed on hold, but it looks like, again, this just coming through, that the appellate court is not going to allow that. The judge, the appeals judge, Elizabeth Gonzalez, is saying, nope, we're going to move forward, and jury selection will begin on April 15th. So perhaps the next leg of this is whether or not they can get a new judge, because it still seems as though no one has ruled on that particular issue, whether or not they can actually get a new judge, because this judge has a daughter that profits off of, well, literally the case that he's going to be ruling on. I mean, this is what her Democrat candidates have been raising money on. So again, it's scheduled to start April 15th. He's facing 34 accounts, ladies and gentlemen, of falsifying business records, all related to a $130,000 payment that was allegedly made to this adult film actress, Stormy Daniels, all ahead of the 2016 election. Now, it is said that this payment was made allegedly to keep her quiet, and this is what's now being sort of, and by the way, it's already been decided once, right? So it's being escalated. Mershon, the judge in this case, issuing a gag order against Donald Trump just last week. The gag order designed to stop him from targeting the judge himself and his daughter. Now, before you say, oh, his daughter, no, she's a fully grown woman. New York Post had a big story on her, fully grown woman. You see a picture of her and her dad. She runs a Democrat consulting firm that makes a ton of money off of none other than the likes of Adam Schiff, Kamala Harris, and the DNC. And they raise money and send out emails off of this case. I mean, this case in particular has been mentioned multiple times. And according to the New York Post, she's been able to make a massive haul of some $93 million related to this case and a few others against Donald Trump. So she's raking it in, and it does not look appropriate, obviously, for her dad to be the one deciding this case. It would be very simple for him to get off, but nobody wants that, because they want him stuck in this trial during the height of the campaign season. So I'm still waiting for some clarity on that, but thus far it looks as though we are moving forward here. April 15th is the date, unless somebody says, okay, we need to find a new judge. Maybe they'll be able to do that. The jury selection is going to be what it is. The New York Appeals Court rejecting Donald Trump's request to delay his April 15th trial. Just wild, absolutely wild. Great to have you here. I just want to quickly go out and give a good hello. I think we need to go out to YouTube for a moment. I forgot to do that earlier. Well, we're going to have to go back later. But thank you for all your comments. I can see, of course, again, it's a live show. It's great to have you here. And we'll continue the conversation and continue the saga of just exactly what happens next here in this wild ride here as we prepare for April 15th. Mark your calendar. It's going to be a very, very big day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you tomorrow. Enjoy the eclipse.